Ah, October. For those of us in the northern hemisphere, our days grow shorter, our nights stretch a little longer, and there's a crispness in the air that whispers of something otherworldly. As we settle into the heart of fall, the world around us feels different. The trees are draped in shades of orange and gold, the smell of pumpkin spice and bonfires fills the air, and everywhere you look, there's a sense of anticipation because Halloween is right around the corner. For many people, this is a time for costumes, candy, spooky movies, and ghost stories told while wrapped in cozy blankets. For us horse people, we may joke and crack puns about spooky season, poking fun at our equine friends' habits to spook at the slightest sign of danger. But for centuries, October has been a month steeped in superstition and mystery. Our ancestors across the world believed that as the nights grew longer, the veil between the living and the dead grew thinner, and strange creatures lurked just out of sight. The chill in the air didn't just mean a change in the weather, it was a reminder that the shadows might hold something darker. That's where our story begins. Folklore has long warned of creatures that lurk in the quiet, fog-covered nights of fall, waiting to deceive or even drag you away. These monsters may look harmless, sometimes even beautiful. But beware, appearances can be deceiving. For many cultures, the horse is more than just a noble steed. It's a gateway to the unknown, a harbinger of danger, a creature whose guise can conceal something far more sinister. So saddle up, friends, because today, we're going on a journey into the wild, haunted world of horse-like monsters. And remember, this is one ride you definitely don't want to take alone. Welcome to History from Horseback.
I so wanted to be like in the start when you started up, be like, for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere and like do that sort of thing, and then just be like, however, down the Southern Hemisphere, it's starting to get really balls hot. My cherry tree just flowered for 2 weeks and then died. And my dog is obsessed with chasing flies around the house. So that's what fall is. Oh, well, that's what it's springtime down here.
Yes. It's spring for you guys. That's why I had to make that Northern Hemisphere note because I was like, oh, oh right, this is not a universal thing. This is
Unfortunately, no. How funny would the world be if it was the same all the way around?
I think it's cool that it's not the same everywhere.
I do too, but I think it's really funny that people seem to forget that, like, when I talk about the fact that my Christmas takes place on the beach with beer, playing cricket and doing stupid things and eating seafood, people are like, what? And I'm like, yeah, because it's like 40 degrees, or like 95, sorry.
You're like, it's 40 degrees. And they're like, yeah, you should be inside, bundled up.
Yeah, and I'm like...
And you're like, I meant Celsius.
It's like, hang on, let me just convert this in my brain for you really quickly. 1 second.
Hello, everyone. My name is Keagan.
My name is Keely.
And welcome to a very special, fun, little spooky episode that we're doing.
I am not used to doing the spooky theme. Halloween is not really celebrated in Australia. There are some people in my street who have put decorations up this year. I think it's about 2 out of about 45. So doing well. It does not stop stores from putting up Halloween sales and things like that. But no, this is a bit of a different one for me. So either way, it's still very fun. And I get to learn a lot of things just like usual. So
cool. I mean, to be fair, I haven't put up any decorations either because I ain't got money for that.
That's so valid. I think in Australia, people put up decorations because otherwise the very few people who do trick or treat end up going to a bunch of houses and just getting turned away because no one's prepared and no one has anything. So it's sort of the people who do go trick-or-treating just stick to the houses that have decorations and know that they're gonna get something and not just get ignored. Imagine you're on a vacation in Scotland. It's a gloomy day with thunderclouds rolling in over the loch. You peer out over the water and see a huge black horse moving towards you. Its mane is dripping wet and threaded with seaweed. The creature looks at you and turns its back towards you. It seems that it wants you to ride it. You hesitantly move closer and climb up on its back. You give its neck a scratch before realizing that your legs are stuck. And not only that, but so is the rest of you. You struggle and wiggle, but no matter how hard you try, you can't get off. The horse wades deeper and deeper into the water as you both slip beneath the water, never to return home. If this story sounds like you, congratulations! You've just had an encounter with a kelpie. What a pity you won't make it home to tell everyone about how pretty the horse was until it turned on you. It's said that kelpies can be tamed if they're bridled, simmering down to a regular horse but retaining their magical strength. However, if that bridle were to come off, the creature will revert back to its original kelpie form, ready to seek revenge on not just you, but your entire family for imprisoning it. The curse is exceptionally strong, and the kelpie will not be satisfied until your last descendant dies miserably.
So you mean the average mini?
Yeah, basically.
The average Shetland?
Yeah. They're like, that's it. I'm done. I'm coming after you and all your family. Let's go.
They're like, I will end your bloodline for this.
Yeah. In my nightmares, I see Shetlands. I recently spoke to my friend Shona, a Scottish native, who graciously answered a few of my questions about kelpies in modern-day Scotland. She said, the best way to explain what a kelpie is simply a shape-shifting spirit that's real form is like a huge horse. They're unfortunately not really even common knowledge. I think a lot of people didn't even know about them until the kelpies got built. The kelpies referencing a huge set of statues that were built in a town called Falkirk in Scotland. You should have a look at them if you can. They are absolutely massive. They also get vandalised quite frequently, I've heard from her, which is devastating. But they are technically an art installation, and there's a lot more information you can go and find on them. They are very, very cool.
Yeah, I've seen like photos of it and everything. They're massive. I didn't realize just how big they were until you see like people next to them or like photos taken from like the base, like looking up at them.
Yeah.
And they're also beautiful, in my opinion.
They are. I was going to say, they are. They're absolutely incredible. I mean, definitely one of those things that I'm like, if I went to Scotland, I'd want to go visit 100%. She also said she didn't hear about them until she was quite a bit older and started reading a lot of Scottish folklore stuff on her own. She said, in terms of fear factor, I'd probably rate them pretty high because unlike a lot of other folklore here, their main kind of vibe is just pure misery. A vengeful one isn't content on just killing you, it wants to make you and everyone you ever known suffer. I will say that the kelpies being installed helped to make Falkirk get more in touch with its roots though. Lots more traditional stuff has been going on around there since they were installed, so maybe the kelpies had helped to spread some more good rather than misery.
I like that.
I think it's really cool.
I was reading up a little bit on like the kelpies statue, and I was reading how the artist really wanted them to be a symbol of not just, you know, the mythological kelpie, which we see as like pretty sinister and dark, but also just kind of like celebrating Scottish folklore and the creativity of the Scottish people, and also like the work ethic that horses have and have had historically.
For sure. I think it's cool that she noted that like it's helped people get back in touch with like the more traditional side of things, and there's been like more festivals and like parades and stuff, including that sort of thing. I don't know. I think it's really cool that something like that could sort of spring as a really big, for lack of a better term, like a really big conversation topic.
Yeah.
Of like what they were and where they came from. I know that like it's kind of off topic, but like I know that Australia really doesn't teach in school anyway, in a lot of schools, doesn't teach a lot about our Indigenous culture. I think, you know, they're getting better at it these days. But on the whole, you know, like we really don't get in touch with a lot of that stuff. We don't get to learn a lot of it. We basically scratch the surface and then move on. which is really unfortunate because I'm sure that there are plenty of stories out there. You know, like through my own research and stuff, I found out, you know, of like stories about the rainbow serpent and, you know, other things like that. But on the whole, you sort of do have a bit of a separation of that sort of stuff and like the traditional things that get lost with time when people stop sort of talking about them or giving them space to shine. So that's really cool to me.
Mm. One thing about a lot of like the art that I've seen of kelpies is kind of interesting to me because they're always drawn as like you can tell you're like there's something not normal about that horse.
Yeah.
And I imagine
Something haunting.
yes, but like for the actual, you know, mythical creature to work, or folklore creature, whatever you'd like to call it, for it to actually work, it's, you know, supposedly a very beautiful looking horse that kind of enthralls you and gets you to approach it. So I'm like, they must not look like that, you know, when they're first getting you to approach them.
Well, it's also said that they apparently can take the form of women, similar
Ah.
to how sirens lure their, you know,
Mhm.
pirates or sailors to their watery demise. Yeah, apparently they could also shapeshift and take the form of women and lure people back to closer to the water before turning into a massive horse and eating them. So yeah, absolutely a possibility. And I think I don't know if there's any. This is probably something that I should have looked into a bit deeper, but I don't know if there's any like set rules or like sort of like assumptions about what they can and can't shapeshift into.
Mm.
I've seen multiple times that they could shapeshift into women to lure men to their watery graves, but I have not seen much about them being able to shapeshift into other creatures or
Mm.
things like that. So yeah.
Okay. Because, like, I was thinking, I mean, I learned about kelpies when I was younger, primarily because I've always been obsessed with, like, uh,
Yeah.
cryptids, folklore, like monsters, all of that jazz. So I had heard about kelpies before.
The whole Brothers Grimm.
Yes. And one thing I always found funny was like, oh, it lures you to ride it to get on its back. And I was like, who's just getting on random horses' backs? Like, and I guess it's like, I mean, it's a different time back then. But also, I'm like, so you just found a horse out there and you're like, yeah, let's climb on. It wants me
every
to.
equestrian in every equestrian in the world was like, no, not a chance. No, you need to lunge that thing before I get on it.
Oh, exactly.
And by then it's got a bridle on its head, so it's yours. So
Yeah. The kelpie is not the only water spirit that takes the form of a horse. In fact, this seems to be a common theme in folklore. The Scandinavian Nyx is a shape-shifting creature with many forms, one of which includes a horse that lures travelers into bodies of water. On the Shetland Islands, you know, I just realized I'm putting two and two together. This is why Shetland
yep,
ponies are the way they are.
I'm starting to see it.
Or maybe this is where this myth comes from because their
Yeah,
own ponies were.
they're all mortifying. I knew something wasn't right.
Actually, I think like I've only ever met like very pretty sweet Shetland ponies, so I'm not to like
That's fair.
disparage them, but they do
Yeah,
have a reputation.
they do. I mean, I think it's because most people's first introductions with Shetlands is like at a fair or a carnival pony ride, and it's just like so over everything,
Yeah.
and it really deserves to just go and chill and sit in the shade and eat some hay.
Yeah.
But he's still got 4 more kids to ride around on the circle, so
I feel like they've kind of got that like small dog syndrome going on, but with a
yeah,
horse.
yeah, for sure.
On the Shetland Islands, there is a sea spirit called the Tangi, which takes the form of a horse or an aged man. Less alluring and more terrifying, this spirit simply abducts and devours those who travel the seaside on their own. Another particularly creepy creature of Orcadian origin is the nuckelavee. This demon is so haunting in nature that it has inspired an SCP.
Incredible.
Yes. If you're not familiar with that, it's basically I mean, it's hard to describe what SCP is. It's open for anyone to submit little articles to it. It's not real, but it seems very real in the way people write the articles, as though there is actually this organization that collects and like contains these different entities that have some sort of kind of supernatural or like otherworldly qualities to them.
That's probably the best way to describe it. Or like a big dictionary of
Mhm.
of haunting creatures and entities that people have created over the years and assigned numbers and ratings, like, threat ratings to,
Mhm.
kind of the same way that, an organization like the FBI or the CIA might organize something like that, but with a supernatural twist.
Mhm.
And it's been in existence for a very, very long time.
Yes.
If you are familiar with Slender Man or like a never-ending staircase, that
Mhm.
someone, which is one of like the most I would say known one, is the staircase. Is like the never-ending staircase that people get eaten on or whatever it is.
Yeah. And it's just like there in forests and stuff for no reason.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, SCP also stands for Secure, Contain, Protect. By the way, if we
Yes.
need to put that in there.
Yeah. And like that's how I first actually heard of the nuckelavee. It was like an SCP. And I just thought, dang, these people have a really weird, twisted creativity. And then it's like, oh no, they literally just ripped off an actual folklore legend.
Yeah.
um, So, according to the legend, when the nuckelavee emerges from the sea, it takes the form of a skinless horse with a human torso growing from its back. The torso's arms are so long that they can reach the ground, and the head on the torso is sometimes described as having the mouth of a pig or a whale. Two very different things, so I don't know why it's one or the other.
Yeah, it's like it could be this one, but it could also be this thing that is also completely different and would be very, very strange.
The demon's breath is said to wilt crops and sicken livestock, and it is believed that the nuckelavee brings times of famine and plague. The only way to escape a nuckelavee with one's life is to cross a body of fresh water. As a sea creature, it is unable to cross it. I think it's just the skinless thing. I don't know. Something about it just like really creeped me out. Like there's like a famous illustration of one based on like the only living supposed witness of this creature.
That's spooky.
It's really spooky looking, and I think it's just the whole skinless thing, and then the really long arms. I don't know, something about it is creepy.
I was gonna say, like, I've just looked up like a bunch of illustrations of it, like people's artistic renditions of it, and it's actually funny to me how many of these renditions don't have the really long arms, when that's like one of the first things they say about it, is that it has arms that touch the ground.
Mm-hmm. Plus, it's like one of the, in my opinion, creepiest traits of it.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
I think some people kind of try to make them look badass rather than
Yeah,
creepy.
absolutely. This one's carrying a sword. Like, it's not a mount, it's an entity. I will say, though, the whole going across a body of fresh water thing, very surefire way to get rid of it. Makes me feel a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, if I was being chased by this thing, I could do that. I could get to a body of fresh water and get across it so I could get away from it.
You could outrun a horse to
I don't know if I can outrun it. Hang on a second. That's not what the question was.
Well, I was saying you gotta outrun it to
It depends. Like, it depends. Like, am I meeting it at my house? Because I probably won't make it in that.
I mean,
and
like,
what if the body of water is perfectly round on all sides and they could just go around it?
Like it's a puddle, and you're like, ha!
Yeah.
Oh no.
Like, there's a dam behind my house, but it is not very big. Like,
yeah. Plus, like,
it would kind of work, but it depends.
Plus, like, this is Orcadian in origin, and those are islands.
Oh yeah, okay, so
and so like think you have a limited amount of space to get away from this thing.
Yeah, okay. I'm taking it back.
It's okay. It just reminds me of when people are like, I could take a lion, and you're like,
yeah, I could beat a gorilla in hand-to-hand
Yes.
combat. Like, wow, you could beat a 600-pound animal in hand-to-hand combat, and when that animal has thumbs? I don't think so.
or like in all of the Jurassic movies when they somehow outrun dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs, yeah.
Then we have the Wiwin. Oh my god. It just sounds wrong. It sounds like Wiwin.
It does too. I didn't read it like that until you said it like that. No, I can't unsee it. Oh shit.
How else am I supposed to say it? I guess
Unlucky. Good luck.
Wiwin. Okay. Then we have the Wiwin of Central America. The Wiwin is a sea-dwelling demon that is horse-shaped, but possesses a mouth full of sharp teeth. This spirit stalks at night and devours humans it comes across. This myth seems to have been first written down in the mid-19th century, leading me to wonder when exactly this creature's form came to be.
It's, what's really funny is that I just looked up the Wiwin on images to see like what people draw it like. Mm-hmm. And after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 results, there's a kelpie.
Yeah.
It's like Greek hippocamp or the Celtic kelpie, and then there's like kelpie.
Yeah. I don't
funny.
think it's a very well-known creature.
No. Although there is some really cool. Although, you know what it looks like? It looks like Eohippus. Or like this drawing of it does.
It kind of does.
I think that's the one that I was looking at. Yeah, no, absolutely. Tell me this version of it doesn't look like an Eohippus. Or one of the ones in that category.
Yeah, like it's got the multiple toes, you know?
Yeah, the feet. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And like, yeah, the mouth looks a little different.
It's really funny because the person who drew this art has said, I kind of made a mix of generic equine and proto-whales to get the aquatic predatory look.
Oh, nice.
Horses are made for running. So I think this beast could catch humans with ease. Perhaps the sail on its back would help a little when it also has to survive the heat. Always a pleasure to work on horse-like creatures. That's very cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah, they initially said, I tried to design it in a way that would make it look like it could move efficiently, both in water and on land, and boy, is that a challenge. Yeah, fair enough. Mm-hmm. Very cool that they thought about that when they...
They put a lot of thought and effort into this art.
I really appreciate that.
Not all water horses are nefarious, however. Once more, we return to Shetland to meet the nuggle, sometimes called the shupilti. This water spirit resides in rivers, streams, and small lochs. It takes the form of a male horse and has a distinctive wheel-shaped tail, which it sometimes hides between its legs. The nuggle is shy and prefers to remain nocturnal. Generally, the nuggle is described as being more gentle than the equine monsters previously listed. More of a trickster than a villain, the nuggle likes to perform mischief and play pranks rather than attack or attempt to kill others. The hippocampus is, once more, an aquatic equine. Its name literally translates to horse and sea monster, resulting in the name seahorse. This mythological creature comes from Greek and Roman belief, but has spread to many cultures, including Scotland and Western Europe. Depicted as having the upper body of a horse and the lower body of a fish, the hippocampus can be found in both saltwater and freshwater. It is very similar in nature to a normal horse. A hippocampus can be wild, but it can also be tamed and trained by gods or mythological figures. The hippocampus has been utilized in heraldry since the Renaissance and is a common figure in Baroque artwork. For those who are familiar with the scientific names for animals, the name hippocampus might ring a bell. This is because the very real animal, the seahorse, belongs to the genus Hippocampus. These small, peaceful fish are named after the mythological monster due to their horse-like heads and necks, paired with their fish-like appendages.
You know what I want to know? I want to know how a part of our brain came to share this word as well.
I think someone thought it looked kind of like a seahorse, but I can't remember.
You know, that kind of makes sense, although still very strange, because it's so tiny and neither of these parts of the word put together, neither horse nor sea monster, I have any idea of what that has to do with the brain. But you know what? We don't question modern science because not a lot of it makes sense. Not much less the naming conventions that early science used.
Yeah. I just looked it up, and yeah, somebody thought it looked like a seahorse.
That's really funny to me. That doesn't look anything like a seahorse.
It's got other names, but yeah.
That's so funny to me.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I do think it's funny how we got to like a lot of just like associated words. Like the folklore monster came first. Then we had a seahorse, which is a fish. And then we got to a part of our brain based off of the fish.
Yeah. It's weird what we reuse language for
Yeah.
and words in language. Also, Latin makes no sense most of the time and should never be taken seriously. There's a reason people will learn it anymore. But we have to. No, we don't. No, we don't. We do not have to keep preserving this silly little language that doesn't make any sense and makes everyone sound silly when they say it.
Though I do like scientific names. I used to hate having to like memorize them and stuff and thought it was like classist and stupid. But now they had me switch sides. Because now I'm like, well, if you know the scientific names of things, you automatically know what's related to what. And I think that's very cool.
Yeah.
And you can, like, things you don't necessarily know much about. Like, you can learn about a new thing. Like, say you learn about a new plant. And they're like, yeah, it's in this family. And you're like, oh, I know other plants from that family. So I wonder if they're going to have similar traits. And a lot of the times they do. And it's kind of cool. But having to learn Latin just for Latin's sake is dumb.
It is. It is. And I've never met someone who could speak Latin because they learnt it and has used it at any point in time.
Just know some of the basic roots and you're good.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing I thought was interesting, like before we go on to our last monster, is just like, why are horses associated with water so much?
Yeah, it is really strange. I don't know. It's a very recurring theory though.
Like the one thing I can link it to maybe is just the fact that like water has been used for transportation a lot throughout human history, and like horses have also been used for transportation throughout history. So like I can see maybe that being like a parallel, but I don't know. Or even just like horses in the sea foam, like the waves crashing looks kind of like a whole bunch of horses running, but like I don't know if that's something I ever like thought of by myself before I was primed to think that due to like media.
There's also something to be said for the fact that a lot of these folklore stories came up in a time when horses were really important and were like an everyday part of life, and people relied on them and cared for them, and you know, they were kind of like man's best friend instead of dogs.
Yeah, true.
And the juxtaposition of having an animal that's usually very sweet natured and very gentle and kind being super big and scary and dangerous might have something to do with it. That's my stab in the dark. It's probably completely unfounded, but that's my guess.
I mean, like, nowadays, like, some of the more modern, like, ghost stories involve, like, cars. Like, there's ghost cars, right? And I wonder if that possibly also is just, like, a similar place in our brain of just, like these old horse folklore are, like, the old version of ghost cars.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, oh no, what if my thing that I rely on became dangerous and wanted to try and kill me? That would be terrifying.
Right, yeah. Because, like, I imagine, you know, a lot of these myths that involve water are, I imagine, serving the purpose of having children and people who can't swim stay away from bodies of water. Like, it's the way to warn them, to keep them from drowning, maybe, in a way. It's like, don't go near that water because this spirit might show up and drown you. As like a way to keep people safe, because it seems like folklore a lot of the times kind of had that purpose of either like instilling a value or giving the reason for certain practices. But it's interesting because they're not always dangerous either. Like, you know, the hippocampus. But yeah, it was interesting to me when I was like looking it up, and I was like, Almost everything involves water.
It's such a recurring theme. But I also feel like water is just a scary thing for humans in general. Like the whole we know more about the space than we do about the bottom of our oceans sorts of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what, if I wanted to make something extra scary, I would put it at the bottom of the Mariana Trench and tell you that, you know, if you went near it, it was going to kill you. Absolutely, I would do that to scare people.
Yeah, very true.
Because it's like when you think about big sea, deep sea trenches, like that's default scary, right? Yeah.
With the nuckelavee, I mean, that sounds pretty terrifying of something just like lumbering out from the ocean and then
Ugh.
transforming into this creepy thing and like coming after you at night.
Yeah, and not even coming at you fast, but slowly.
Yeah.
That's scarier, arguably.
The final horse monster I'll be talking about today is our only land dwelling creature. The tikbalang is a creature of myth that hails from the folklore of the Philippines. Often depicted as a humanoid figure with the head and limbs of an animal, typically a horse, the tikbalang is a creature known for its trickery and mischievous nature. In Filipino mythology, it is said to be both a protector of the forest and a mischievous spirit that delights in leading travelers astray. The tikbalang is described as a tall, skeletal figure with long, gangly limbs and the head of a horse or sometimes other equine creatures. Its body is often said to be covered in coarse hair, with hooves in place of human feet. Some stories say the tikbalang has glowing red or yellow eyes. Depending on the region and the specific variation of the myth, the creature may appear either as a fully horse-headed figure or as a more human-like shape, but its equine traits are always prominent. The tikbalang is typically depicted as being very agile and swift, able to move through the forests and mountains with incredible speed. It is often portrayed as having supernatural abilities, including invisibility, shapeshifting, and the power to control the natural element. The tikbalang is well known for its love of mischief. One of its most famous traits is its ability to lead travelers astray, particularly those who wander into the forest or the mountains. Those who are lost in the wilderness may walk in circles for hours or even days, as the tikbalang subtly manipulates their sense of direction, all the while observing them from the shadows, delighting in their confusion. In many versions of the myth, the tikbalang is said to haunt areas where people would most likely become lost, such as forests, mountains, and isolated trails. It has been known to guard sacred or forbidden places, and many superstitions suggest that the creature may protect certain areas from intruders. Given the tikbalang's trickster nature, many superstitions and beliefs have arisen around how to avoid its influence or counteract its tricks. Some common ways to protect yourself include the following. All right, you ready for your list of protecting yourself?
I am so ready for the next time that I travel to the Philippines.
Okay. Wear a garment inside out. It's said that if you wear your clothes inside out, the tikbalang will not be able to recognize you, or it will become confused and leave you alone. Offer a gift or a bribe. In some versions of the myth, offering a small bribe or a gift to the tikbalang, such as a piece of food or an item, can pacify the creature and allow you to go safely on your way. However, this must be done with care, as failing to give the right offering could lead to further misfortune.
You better hope he's a sugar cubes guy, not a carrot guy.
Yeah.
Devastating.
Just like this terrifying monster, but it just has a horse's head, and you're like, well, I got a sugar cube in my pocket, and they're like, just like take
And
it
it does
from
the same snuffling thing.
It's like lips.
Oh no, he's cute. I want to take him home.
I love that. Never look directly at it. Some stories suggest that the tikbalang can be stared down and forced to reveal its true nature, but it's often advised to avoid eye contact entirely. Looking at the creature could result in you becoming its next victim. So it's kind of like some stories are like, stare it down, and others are like, do not look at it.
It's actually just a bear.
Talk to it in a polite manner. In some versions of the story, the tikbalang can be placated by speaking politely and respectfully to it, especially if it's treating you with kindness. Respect for the creature and its domain is essential to avoid falling victim to its tricks.
This iconically could be applied to any horse.
I honestly, yes. I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, how many of these would work on a real horse?
This is me approaching my school lesson horse for like my 30-minute lesson on a Thursday at 2 p.m. Being like, hey, I'm in your domain. Please don't be mean to me. I just need you for 30 minutes for my lesson and then you can go home.
Use salt or holy objects. Just like in other folklore traditions where Christianity entered the picture, salt is often used to repel malevolent spirits. In some Filipino communities, holy objects such as crosses, prayers, or religious symbols are thought to provide protection against the tikbalang. Similar to the kelpie, the tikbalang is a pre-Christianity creature that remains an iconic piece of folklore to the Filipino culture. It appears in literature, films, and TV shows, where it can be depicted as a fearsome beast, a trickster, or a nature spirit.
It's honestly one of the coolest ones on the list, definitely. It seems like one of the ones, like, I think if you can interact with it with a chance of not dying, but also just as much of a chance of dying, I think that makes it very fun and exciting.
Yeah.
Because it's like, this thing could be your bestie, or it could eat you.
Yeah.
It's really up to it's really up to what you're giving it, or how you're speaking to it, or if you're wearing your shirt inside out or not.
I do really like the creatures in folklore that you can like come across and then like it can trick you or you could trick it. Like the ones where it's kind of a little battle of wits going on.
It's very fun.
Yeah.
Although I must say, I really do like the fact that every time we've gone onto a creature, I've looked it up just to see what people draw it like, because I think you can tell a lot about a creature and how people artistically render them.
Yeah.
And a lot of the renditions of this one is just a really buff man with a horse head. Like, you didn't even try.
Yeah, I think this one might be a favorite of the furries.
Oh, the furries, 100%. They have taken this one and run with it in a few different ways. And honestly, there's an AI one here. It so looks AI generated, but it's got like a giraffe head.
I see the exact one you're talking about.
It's so weird. I'm like, this doesn't look anything like what they've described. You didn't even try.
Oh my god. Some of these are really creepy and good.
Yeah.
But yeah,
especially the ones with as soon as you give it long arms, I'm on board. It's creepy.
Yeah, but a lot of them really are just like buff man, horse head.
Yeah, horse head, yeah.
And yeah, like you know, to be fair, like a lot of Filipino folklore, like creatures, they are wild. They're some of the like craziest things out there. Like there's a lady who, when she's like normal at the daytime, and then at the nighttime, the top half of her body comes off, and she sprouts wings from like her head.
Ugh.
Yeah, and then she flies around, and then she like, I don't know if she's the same one, but she has this really long tongue. Okay, this is gonna sound gross. And she'll like eat fetuses out of pregnant moms using the tongue like from their belly buttons.
Damn, that's weird and very specific.
So yeah, like Filipino folklore is like weird, but in a way I love. At least for me, as an American and stuff, like we don't get to hear as much like about those cultures.
Yeah.
And so I mean that's probably why it seems so out there, like to us. But
yeah.
But to them they're like, yeah, that's like, you know,
I learned this growing up.
Yeah.
It's so very normal.
Like, this is the cryptid I learned about growing up. Like, this was our boogeyman. Like, you don't stay out after dark because of this.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, that, like, throws back to what I said earlier on, you know, about, like, especially growing up in Australia, you know, being told stories about the dream time from Indigenous Australians, but not really having a chance to explore them outside of that. Like you'd sort
Mm-hmm.
of hear the stories and whatnot, and then that would kind of be it. And it's like sad that, you know, we don't get to dig deeper into them unless we go looking for it ourselves, or, you know, unless you seek people out who can tell you those things and educate you about that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, because I'm thinking about kind of the comparison, like here in the U.S., it's probably around like third and fourth grade. We were learning state history, so it was California history for us, where I was living, and we learned actually like quite a bit about the local tribe, which was the Kumeyaay, and we even read like a book that was like a historical fiction where like the main character was like he ended up living with the Kumeyaay and like learning all of their ways and stuff. Which like I
Yeah.
don't know why every story about it's got to be told from the point of view of a white person entering that culture. It can't just be told from
Yeah.
like the point of view of someone who was born into it
Yeah,
for some
exactly. Which
reason.
is, yeah, so it's just like we have, like, for a lack of a better term, we have the story from the horse's mouth right here. Like, why wouldn't you
Exactly.
just? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
insane.
and so it was like it's cool. It was I'm glad I learned about it and I really enjoyed learning about it, but there still was always that like overcurrent of like these are other people who live differently than us and this is like how they lived, but it was also it's like there is always the thing of like because we had um in California the Spanish came and formed these missions and
Mm.
they the narrative is still really pushed of like oh well these people didn't know how to live properly before that and then the missions came and helped them and I'm like no, like no
I
the
promise you, they were doing
they
fine and having a great time
yeah I loved how
until these people showed
yeah
up.
exactly like I really didn't after that I really didn't learn all that much about like uh any like native cultures until I took a lot of like native studies classes in college, which they
Mm.
were some of the coolest like courses I took. But yeah, just overall, like there are so many like legends. Like I have like a Native American legends and myths book that is like one of my favorites to read like from time to time.
Mm.
And I like never heard so many of these stories, which is wild because I'm like they are stories from my area where I live.
Yeah.
And yet I heard of kelpies before I heard this folklore.
Yeah, which is like it's so weird to like, you know, we know Egyptian mythology, we
Mhm.
know Norse, we know Greek, we know Roman, but we don't know our own. And it's like that's weird. That's
Yeah.
so weird. Why do we know about these ancient dead cultures instead of knowing about our own? Like
And it's like
makes
I
no
think we should
sense.
know about both. But I like,
Yeah.
you know, some of these ancient cultures really get put on like this weird pedestal where I'm like I have never been to Egypt. What do we
Yeah, what are we doing here?
I just like to learn about everywhere, but I think local stories are really important. And this is actually something I learned from one of my like native studies professors that she was talking about. She's like, stories from your local area are really important because like humans, we have this kind of need to feel like we belong to a place. And
Yeah.
the more stories and history you hear about a place, the more you can like feel like you belong there and the more you kind of understand it and like can fit into kind of this story that's being constantly written. And so it's really important to learn about your like local area where you live because a lot of the times, especially like with our kind of modern like globalized culture, one of the like downsides of that, even though it's super cool to get to like communicate and learn from all over the world, you can also sometimes feel very like displaced in your own area because you're not
Mm.
connected to where you're living.
100%.
You know, that's something that folklore does. It connects you to where you're living and it connects you to the past and to other people.
It's also a way to like carry the stories on of like where you live. The equine monsters we listed today possess common thread. Beyond that of water, they serve as timeless reminders that nature is both beautiful and deadly. They remind us of a world where mystery lurks at the edges of civilization and where folklore serves as a way to explain the unexplainable. As we celebrate spooky season and the eerie traditions of Halloween, it's a good time to remember that folklore has a way of bringing us closer to people of the past who wondered what walked about in the dark of night. Whether they're water spirits, trickster beasts, or mythical horsemen, these creatures continue to spark our imaginations, blending fear and wonder in equal measure. So next time you find yourself wandering near a dark loch or wandering through a foggy forest, remember the stories that we've shared today. And be wary of that beautiful glistening horse by the water's edge, because you never know if it's a kelpie waiting to lure you into the depths.
Thank you for listening to History from Horseback. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you like what you heard, please consider leaving a rating or review, or consider following us on Facebook and Instagram. As a new upcoming podcast, we rely on your feedback to grow and improve. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you out on the trail.